To the best podcast out there.
It's us.
It's us. Hello.
We're the best podcast out there.
That's Brittany. I'm Ashlyn.
Oh my gosh.
And
We're on the
we
last.
are the Unsynchronized Ignited podcast.
It's my favorite.
It is good. The consistency, like you just said before.
Consistency is key.
Yeah, consistency is key. Gotta be consistent with it.
Oh, I can't put this on my other screen. Okay, whatever.
I officially went live on my Instagram.
I am live on mine as well. All right. Okay, so first off, before we begin, we are interviewing Alfie Kohn, which is the author of Punished by Rewards, which is the book that we are reading. And we are interviewing him on, oh my gosh, Ash, is it Tuesday?
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow.
We're interviewing him tomorrow. We're speaking to the one and only Alfie Kohn tomorrow. We have to remember to call him Mr. Kohn. We have to call
Mr.
him Mr. Kohn
Kohn
tomorrow.
I can't call him Alfie. I'll be like, maybe I'll ask.
We can ask. Watch us get dismissed on air, though.
It wouldn't be the
really,
first time.
Yeah, it would be really on brand for us, actually.
Yeah. Oh man, I gotta have like a response already, like practice.
We gotta be ready.
So we are interviewing Alfie Kohn tomorrow, and that is the author of Punished by Rewards, which is what the book we've been reading. And we are opening up questions to the community. What would you like to ask him? What would you like us to ask him? And we will ask him your questions. And then it's not going to, I don't know if we're going to do a live or if we're just going to have the podcast episode available on Spotify, but we'll figure that out. So if you would like us to ask Alfie Kohn a question on your behalf, please put it in the comment section.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was trying to think through the logistics of trying to do a live while we do the call. I don't know. We'll post though. Like we'll post on the Ignited podcast page if we're able to go live, and like we'll tell you there.
Yeah. Yep. So if you don't follow Ignited, that we made an Instagram page for it. So I don't have a connection to it, but I can put it in my profile.
I am putting the handle in the comments right now.
Oh yeah, don't smart
it there.
Look at you.
I'm pretty sure that's correct. It might not be. I should probably go check. I think we have an underscore. You know when like your original thing is taken and then you have to figure out which one will work.
Yeah.
It's like okay, underscore, period, hyphen, who knows?
Yeah. The year you were born.
Exactly. That one's correct though.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready to actually start this thing? Get
the
show on the road? All right. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ignited podcast. I'm Ashlyn.
And I'm Brittany.
And today we are going to be diving into chapter 12 of Punished by Rewards, which is called Good Kids Without Goodies. So, Brittany, you have the honor of leading us in the first summary tonight.
Oh, okay.
You know what I was just thinking when we do? So we have the interview we're doing with Alfie Kohn tomorrow. And that'll be the next episode in this series for people listening on Spotify. And then after that, we're going to read the afterword and reflect on the book. Should we try to do a 2-minute summary of the entire book?
Ha! Yeah. Yeah, why not?
We're ambitious. All right.
Yeah.
So we'll have that to look forward to. But that means we only have 2 more episodes left of this season.
Yeah.
And then our first season's in the books.
I know.
That's crazy.
That's so crazy. When did we start this?
I feel like it was January.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it's been amazing. I'm really glad that we did this. All right. Anyways, are you ready for your 2-minute summary, Britt?
Oh, yes.
All right. Here we go. On your mark. Get set. Go.
Okay, so this is chapter 12, Punished by Rewards. Good Kids Without Goodies. In this chapter, Alfie Kohn really emphasized how can we get kids to be morally responsible, pro-social beings, pro-social people. And he explained that we cannot do that through bribing or punishing them. We have to do that with collaboration and providing choice and having conversations with students and our kids. We need to model pro-social and moral behavior. We need to practice perspective taking. We need to establish community within, especially for teachers, within our classroom. He also spoke about how it is a responsibility of schools because because morals and pro-social behaviors and ideals are not always taught in the home, and students spend so much time with us that the school really becomes a place that we could teach social responsibility and democracy. He emphasizes that if we're going to teach our students democracy, it is a good idea to model democracy in the classroom, and that means allowing students to have choice, a voice, and freedom in the classroom. He also talked about how
That's time.
Okay, all right. Well,
cliffhanger.
Yeah. Because what I was going to say was really good, and it might actually be one of my quotes.
Oh, okay. So you have to wait till later in the episode to hear that last part.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. All right. So are you ready for my summary?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, hold on. Let me get my timer up. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Go.
All right. So in chapter 12 of Punished by Rewards, Alfie Kohn examines what it takes to actually raise good, in quotes, good kids, but like the kind of kids who grow up with the values that we want them to have in society. Because if you're somebody who works with children, like you want to raise good humans, people who are pro-social, people who are kind, thoughtful, collaborative. And this looks at how you go about doing that. So the three main ingredients that Kohn mentioned to help do this are the return of the 3 C's, which we talked about in an earlier episode. But basically, making sure that the content that we are teaching kids or the requests that we're asking kids is worthwhile or impactful or meaningful. And if it's silly and they don't want to do it, it's not worth the argument. And then the second thing is collaboration. So getting kids to collaborate with each other, but also for us to collaborate with them and problem solve together and to view them as another human and not something under our control. And then finally, the last option, or not the last option, but the last thing that you should do is to provide choice for students and let them pick their pathway, let them pick what they want to do. And then all of this will lead to creating caring children. But in order to do that, you also have to model, because kids are watching everything you do. You have to make sure you're explaining what you're doing, because your actions speak louder than words. You assume the best, you offer opportunities to care, and you emphasize the act of perspective taking. So then all of that boils down to modeling it, solving problems, and then teaching it directly. And you can also ingrain these things in the arts or regular content that you teach. All right. Pretty good.
Yes, that was fantastic. I love it.
Thank you. You know, I feel like we really kill those summaries. I think they're awesome.
Yeah, I think we've gotten pretty friggin' good.
We have.
Mm-hmm.
So when you were reading this chapter, what are some of the things that stood out to you?
Oh, there were so many, because I really pride myself on being a teacher that teaches with natural consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like the use of rewards. I like to teach with self-determination. So autonomy, belonging, and competency, making sure those needs are met, and the students will feel a sense of intrinsic motivation, and they will I'm sorry, I got distracted. So their attitudes are just more positive. And I don't have to deal with as many behaviors because I'm meeting their needs.
Yeah.
And this chapter really validated my practice.
Definitely. I feel like it validated everything that we stand for.
Yeah.
Was there anything that was a little bit conflicting for you, or you were like, yeah, I should do that instead?
Not really. I'm pretty aligned with everything he wrote about. And I feel like I've had the experience with punishments and watching teachers who are highly controlling and punitive kind of like kick themselves or like not kick themselves, but like
make it harder on themselves.
Fall victim, to self-fulfilling prophecies and their students not having any motivation. When he talked about like, you know, the old adage that you can't smile until Christmas. Like that's such an archaic practice. And I think at the beginning of my career, like that just felt wrong, you know? So
I did that.
Like getting to this point.
I don't know. Like I tried to do that and it was freaking exhausting. And I didn't like it and I was miserable.
Yeah.
So it wasn't worth it. The area that I feel like this is very much in line with everything that I talk about too. But one thing I was like, oh yeah, I should definitely do that more. Involved like the community aspect of kids and having them not just share with a partner and then share what they thought, but to share what their partner thought.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I should do that more. Like that's such a good practice. And like I think as teachers, we all know about that. But I just forget in the day to day. So I'm like, I gotta make that be a habit to do going back to school because I've been on break for the past week.
I will say that one thing that I think I'm going to apply more is explicitly teaching perspective taking.
Yes.
I don't do as much. And I'm in a position to being, you know, an art teacher. I can I could show more artwork. I could host more exercises
or even like art from different periods in history from differing perspectives.
Yeah.
I think we did that with like the American, not the American Revolution. One of the battles, wasn't it the first battles in the Boston Massacre? Like the Boston Massacre, looking at different pictures, different depictions of that event.
Yeah.
And looking at it through different lenses.
Right.
That stuff can be powerful.
Yeah. And I don't think that perspective teaching, it's not, I mean, I was never taught how to take someone else's perspective at home. But he brought up a really good exercise where if someone is yelling at you and you're with your kid, you can be like, oh, I wonder what made him so angry that he would yell at us. Like, I wonder how his day has been that he would be in such a bad mood that he would yell at people. Like something as simple as that, it can be so powerful for a child. Like, oh yeah, I wonder, you know, he yelled at us.
Yeah,
it's not normal.
It can be. When I was reading that, I had a memory that came back to my mind when I was a child, and we were going to the movie theater with my grandmother. And naturally, we're all trying to sneak in snacks because you want to pay for them in the movie theater, right? And so I had like juice boxes in my arms, or like a thing of Whoppers or whatever. And we go to get the tickets, and the woman trying to sell our tickets is like, "Are you bringing candy in? Or are you bringing snacks in?" And my grandma's like, "No, I'm not doing that." And she looks over at me and goes, "Open up your arms." And I'm like 7. And I'm like, oh, I do. And like all the candy and juice boxes fall onto the sidewalk.
Oh
And my grandmother's like, that's it. We're leaving here. We don't need to deal with this. And so we get back into the car. And apparently I said something along the lines of like, oh, I wonder why she was feeling so cranky. Maybe she was just having a bad day today or something.
Yeah.
And I remember like hearing about that. I don't really remember doing it, but I remember
Yeah.
hearing about that story. And that came to my mind, the movie. Anyways.
No, I remember like in elementary school, one of the only lessons that I remember, like I don't remember much of school that's positive, but this activity was, and our teacher showed us videos of people who there was a cashier and she was checking out someone and she was really rude to the person.
Mm-hmm.
And then she paused it and we talked about, well, why would she be rude? What could she be experiencing that made her like feel like she needed to be rude, or she didn't have the patience. And then like later in the video, the cashier is interviewed and she's like, yeah, I've been working for 12 hours. My feet really hurt. I have my kid that I have to go home to. Like, and that I think was one of the first times I really understood that somebody else might be going through pain or experiencing pain, and that's going to impact how they interact with other people. And I don't know if I would have had that revelation so young if it wasn't for that exercise that we did.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. I still remember it.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing we have to teach. Mm-hmm. Like going through this, I was thinking of like all these different lessons to share with teachers here that could be helpful, mm-hmm. you know? Mm-hmm. What was the quote that you picked?
Well, I have two.
Oh.
Yeah.
Overachiever, Brittany.
So I have, if children feel safe, it's on page 239. If children feel safe, they can take risks, ask questions, make mistakes, learn to trust, share their feelings, and grow. If they are taken seriously, they can respect others. If their emotional needs are met, they have the luxury of being able to meet other people's needs. Deprived of these things, however, they may spend their lives doing psychological damage control. Their own needs may echo so loudly in their ears that they will be unable to hear, much less respond to the cries of others.
Yeah, I highlight that one too.
Yeah. So that's, I think, so telling of like society today and how important it is that we teach these, you know, values of caring for others, especially when they're in pain or they're struggling. Mm-hmm. Like, because from my comment section on that post, they needed some people to care for them. Like,
our comment sections can be wild sometimes. If you're ever like, what's it like making social media videos? Pick one of our viral videos and just go read the comments and commit to it for like 15 minutes, and then you'll see.
Yeah. We need more love.
Yes,
people need more love.
There's something I wanted to share with that. Oh, well, I was even just talking to my husband too over the weekend because we were traveling, and he like works with all these adults who are like lashing out and struggling, and I'm like, it's in society. Mm-hmm. And I also think that it's really important for us to model this, especially when it comes to the things that set us off in the classroom. Like if our kids are struggling, let's say no one does their homework, or if a kid is being disruptive, how we respond to that really matters. Mm-hmm. And it makes me infuriated thinking about the whole, just ignore it.
Yeah.
Thing, because you have kids who are in a crisis and crying out for help.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I did used to use the ignoring tactic.
Same.
Yep. And I think I even made a video about it, like planned ignoring. But I will say that there's a difference between actively ignoring, like telling the kid that, hey, I'm here, but right now I'm going to give you your space
Yeah,
and I'm
I feel
going
like
to
that's
let
just
you cope.
communicating.
Right. Over like planned ignoring, like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm just going to ignore because if I feed the behavior with attention, then it's just going to increase the behavior.
Yeah. Or what I used to do would be like, wow, I love if I saw like you standing on your chair.
Oh my
I'd be like,
gosh.
wow, I love how Ashlyn's sitting so calmly.
Which he addressed in the book.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, how patronizing is that? Like, I'm just sitting here and a teacher says, hey, I like how you're sitting quietly and doing what is expected of you. Like, I'd be like, thanks.
Yeah, I also think like there are a lot of things that are not always as big as they might seem to be. Like before break started, it was like the last class of the day before break. And one of my students sitting at his desk and just started like lifting the desk up and like putting it back down, lifting it up, putting it back down. And I'm
Mhm.
like, wonder what he's doing. And like we have a really good relationship. I'm like, hey, if you want to lift things up and put them back down, like if you want to move the furniture back there and like clean under my desk, I would not might
Yeah.
be opposed to that. And he started laughing, and I asked him like, what's going on? He's like, I just feel like I really got to move. And I was like, what, do you want to stand back here, or like actually go to the back of the room and like do that? And
Yeah.
he was like, no, that's okay. I'll move in my chair like this, or I'll move wiggle like this. And I was like, all
Uh-huh.
right, cool. There
Yeah.
was no power struggle. It was like
No.
just acknowledging, communicating,
Mhm.
being a bit silly with it, and then solving stuff.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know?
Like noticing a need. Like
Yeah.
obviously, the kid doesn't have a need met, or he wouldn't be
Mhm.
lifting up his like desk like, hey, what's up? And that's
Yeah.
something that he emphasized in this chapter too. Like he says specifically, the best way to find out why a kid did something is to ask them.
Exactly.
Yeah, and not to frame it in a way like, why did you do that?
Yeah,
Where
that
they
was
know
emphasized too.
they're like, no matter what they say, they're just going to get in trouble, but to actually ask why, to potentially like solve the problem with them.
Yeah. And mean it
Mhm.
and like want to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And this kind of leads the way into my quote, which is also how you think about their motive.
Mhm.
And he's talking about one of my favorite things, which is an asset based lens.
Mhm.
So this is on page 243. Attributing to a child the best possible motive that is consistent with the facts may set in motion another one of those auspicious circles. We help children develop good values by assuming, whenever possible, that they are already motivated by these values, rather than by explaining an ambiguous action in terms of a sinister desire to make our lives miserable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think like if you're constantly assuming the worst from your students, like one, their behavior is going to be out of control because they can tell that. Like,
Yeah,
and two, you're going to be so miserable. That's paranoia. Like,
for real. Like any little thing is going to set you off.
mhm,
Like a kid sighing is
yeah.
going to set you off. A kid putting their head down is going to set you off. And like also I want to be very transparent. Like I honestly speak from being set off by these things earlier in
Mhm,
my career. So I wanted you to know, like if you're listening, I'm not perfect either, and Brittany's not perfect. We
mm-mm,
are all learning together, right?
mhm.
But no, having an asset based lens, it is so freeing for the students and also for you. And actually, I think that's the first video when I talked about an asset based lens, Brittany, that
Mhm.
you and I connected on because people were coming for me in my comments, and Brittany
Yeah.
came like a knight in shining armor and was arguing back and forth with people in the comments for me. And I was like,
Yeah.
who is this
Yeah.
lady?
And here we are,
Here we
4
are.
months later.
Yep. All from that.
Yeah, but like it's true though. Like I remember being in class and if a kid would sigh, being triggered like, "Oh, how disrespectful."
Mm-hmm.
Like well, maybe they just had to maybe
they're just tired.
Yeah, like it 99% of the time it doesn't have to do with you.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you make it have to do with you. Like if you assume that everything has to do with you, eventually their behavior is going to have to do with you because you're getting on their nerves.
Yeah.
Man,
True.
I'm sorry. That was like really aggressive, but it's like something that I like try to get into teachers' heads who deal with behavior. It's like a lot of the times our own stress and anxiety and triggers are triggering the kids.
Mm-hmm. And not being aware of what's happening during the day too.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
if you're just like rolling through an anxious day
Mm.
and you're not checking in with yourself,
Yeah.
it's going to keep impacting the other kids. And like I'm very communicative with my students and I tell them that. Like I'll be like, hey, I'm having a very anxious day today. It has nothing to do with you guys, but just so you're aware, I'm going to work through it. I just want to be upfront with you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, oh, thanks, let me know. And then the kids too, if they'll come to me and be like, hey, like I'm having a really tough day today. I just want to put my head down for a little bit. I'm like, all right, that's fine. Let me know if I can help you. I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like just communicating and like being clear about that too. And like giving kids the words to use to communicate what they're feeling, what they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to cover the second quote I had.
Yeah, you have one more, right?
Yeah, on 249. 249. Where are you? 249.
Whenever
Here we go.
Share quotes, it feels like Battleship. When I'm like, oh, is she going to say the same thing I highlighted as well? You know what I'm talking about?
Okay, so 249. The way a child learns how to make decisions is by making decisions, not by following directions. Like I am so on this. Oh shoot. I am so on this one right now. Like giving my kids freedom to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I just read this great carousel from this neurologist who is on Instagram, and he posted that the brain learns best from making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you allow kids to make mistakes and then fix the mistake, their brain is learning more than if you controlled the environment so much that the mistake could never have been made. Or if the mistake is made and then you lecture them, just let them make mistakes and problem solve with you if need be.
Or on their own too, because I was also emphasizing the chapter too, like with each other.
Yes, or with each other, and fix the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
There more neurons are going to be made, or not neurons, but neural pathways are going to be formed around that experience than if you never let them make the mistake and you just lecture them about being safe, responsible, respectful. Like right now I've got kids that I allow my students to listen to music while they work. And if they like cross a boundary, like let's say they are listening too loudly, okay, then I'll go up to them and I'll be like, hey, I can hear you. Like, I can hear your music. Just turn it down. Okay. So that, or if they're focused more on their music than they are on their work, like that, those are mistakes that I'm allowing them to make in a mildly controlled and structured environment so that they can learn from those mistakes in my classroom instead of trying to learn from them once they're adults and they don't have that controlling, like, you know, authoritative individual, like saying, oh no, you've gotta, like, you can't listen to music, you've got to focus, like I'm teaching them how to multitask and set shift, and I'm giving them the freedom to do that, like,
and to figure how they learn too, right? And like what works best for them. But my question for you is, like, as a teacher, and I know that you have smaller classes as well, but let's assume you have like 27 kids in your class. I feel like you do kind of reach a bandwidth issue Like if you're giving the kids the freedom to choose where they sit, choose listening to music, choose to work quietly or choose to talk through something, like it can be a lot of management to do as the facilitator in the space. So my question for you, maybe even for Alfie tomorrow, Mr. Cohn, tomorrow when we talk to him, would be how ideally, like you would just give them everything and let them try to figure it out with you. Realistically speaking, if you have to get through a curriculum and you are on a tight schedule and you have 27 bodies in a room, what's a bit realistic with that though? What would you think?
So with the curriculum pacing, I tell teachers to listen, I'm going to be like, throw it out the window. No, with curriculum pacing, you have to like set realistic goals for yourself and not what the curriculum company decided. Like that's just not realistic.
Not all administrators will roll with that though.
Right. So if your administrator is like so like on your heels about pacing with the curriculum, I'm going to assume that the school isn't very student focused. Like if they're so like they're gonna use punitive or like discipline you for how you're pacing your curriculum to the point where you couldn't allow for students to engage in things that they enjoy. I would say that you might want to find a different school that is going to be more aligned with your approach. And right now, the amount of teacher openings it sets us up for finding
the kind of place you want to be in. But also, I feel like it can be kind of a revolving door with admin as well.
Yes.
And things can change with the wind. Something that I do to work through this is I talk about my bandwidth with students. And I'll be like, hey, like my bandwidth is not as high right now because I have to manage like the music on the computers and like my projector died. And then to have you guys like picking where you send the room to, it's just going to be a bit too much for me today. But we'll try again later.
Yeah.
And I kind of put it on me and not on them.
Yeah. I also think that if you set at the beginning of the term or the year, if you sit down and you have a conversation, like I just did this with a group of students it's one of my toughest classes, and they want to listen to music during their soft start, or they didn't necessarily want to listen to music. They wanted to use the iPads to draw so they could pull up images and then draw with the images for their soft start. And I sat them down and I said, okay, well, here are my concerns. Like, how can we work through these concerns to make sure that you guys are working and not just on the iPad during this time? And how can we make sure that because the soft start is only 5 to 7 minutes, like how can we make sure that you're not messing with your iPad for the entire time trying to set it up? And we literally came up with a system together.
What's your system?
So if they want an iPad, they just grab it. And at the beginning, they grab the iPad and then they go and grab their folder and then they sit down and they can have both headphones, like their ears covered. And if there's something I need to get like their attention for, it's an emergency. And that's just with the soft start. They can't keep both ears or covered during the time, when they're in their work time. But for the 5 minutes, if I need to talk to somebody, then I just go up and tap their shoulder, or if I got to get everybody's attention, I flick the lights twice, because then they know that it's not a mistake, because they were very concerned that it would be an accident and they'd take off their headphones like that. This was like a whole thing. Like, they're like, well, what if it's a mistake? I'm like, okay, guys, I'll flick the lights twice. Like, and they're like, oh, okay. So if you flick the lights twice, then we know for sure. And I'm like, yes, okay, I'll flick the lights twice. They also decided on a percentage. They can't go over 60% on their volume. and they have to have the iPad face up so we can like see what they're listening to. And there was another thing, like there was a ton of stuff that we wrote down, but I took a picture of what I wrote down. Like I wrote as they were writing, and I took a picture of it, and I'm going to put it up on the projector during this time. So they are aware of like they set their own boundaries with this. And I think that autonomy and the what's the word, like the how they contributed to it, that's really going to help their follow through.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things I think we miss out on,
So I would say if you have short bandwidth, take the responsibility off of you, give it to the students. Like, okay, what does it look like to pick your own seat? Like if you're going to, if it's going to be an argument and I don't have the bandwidth to deal with it, like, then I'm just going to have to go with what's easy for me because I'm like at my wit's end right now, just because of, other stuff. Like include the students.
Yeah, definitely. So what would your action step be for educators or caregivers after reading this chapter?
Include the kids.
Yeah.
With everything. Like it's their space too. Control should be 50-50. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, the better the students feel, and the better the students are at handling that much control.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the issues we run into is that students are not used to having that much control and they go wild with it. Like it gets a lot easier when they're used to having that much freedom.
Yeah, that'd be the same thing that I would say as well. This is a really good chapter to read. Like if you're trying to navigate your own classroom management journey, reading this chapter would be a really good place to start.
Chapter 12, Punished by Rewards.
All right. Well, then that's our last chapter. We're going to have the interview episode with Alfie Kohn. And we're also going to do like a final afterward recap of the whole book episode coming up too. So it's been a really awesome season doing this.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. Well, until next time, I'm Ashlyn.
I'm Brittany.
And we are the Ignited Podcast, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.